In the past, whenever I've looked at CG robots, they've always seemed extremely complex. They seem almost impossible to design from an intermediate artist's perspective. But I still always wanted to try it, and so I did. And it turns out it's much easier than you might think. So let me show you how I did it. So, we start off with the fun part, which weirdly is not thinking about the robot at all, and just making whatever mechanical bit we can think of. Look around you. Find reference images in your room, or in your house, or in your school, or your college, or wherever you go for the next week or so. Try and find inspiration around you. Take pictures and model something from that. But if not there, the internet has no shortage of it. Google Images, Unsplash, Pexels, Pixabay, wherever you find your reference images. Search for machines, factories, trucks, or bulldozers, or whatever comes to mind, and model something from them. And don't just use them as a reference for modeling. Select images that you can project onto the geometry as well, so you're done with texturing as soon as you're done modeling them. And if not that, why not just go to Sketchfab and look for robot models that are not downloadable and take those as reference. Borrow small bits and pieces from different robots and model them yourself in Blender. Don't copy the whole idea or some unique primary bit that the artist put extra effort into. Just borrow common bits and pieces that you might find in every robot. It might seem stupid, but you're getting a 360-degree view of the whole thing. It's better than a 2D reference image if you ask me. And now, if you put some effort into it, you should have a bunch of mechanical bits that you made yourself. You should be proud of yourself. And guess what? Now, you legally have the license to be lazy and go looking for downloadable assets. Robot models, cars, machineries, photo scans, whatever you can get your hands on. And turn this tiny little collection to something much, much bigger. Something you'd never be able to build yourself. And lastly, if you have the money for it, buy a hard surface pack. They're usually pretty affordable for most of us, but I know there would be some school or college students watching for whom even $2 is a lot. But if you can buy one, buy one. Skip a McDonald's meal or something and invest it here. Because if you do, this collection that seemed big a moment ago will seem infinite now, leaving no room for excuses anymore. Because now you have a shit ton of individual pieces. All you gotta do now is compile them all together, for which we'll be needing a reference mesh so we can base our robot off of something. If you're looking to make a human scale robot, take your reference mesh according to that. I intended to make a mini robot, so I had this for a reference mesh. And did I say making the mechanical bits was the fun part? It's not. This is way more fun than that. Because all you gotta do now is plug these bits you made earlier onto this base mesh and go crazy with it. Do whatever the hell you want. Just maintain the overall shape of the base mesh. And guess what? You've looked at robots all your life, so you weirdly know how they're generally supposed to look. So go with your instinct and you should have something interesting in no time at all. Try and give it a concept too if you can. Like my robot is a plant robot. It has this huge dome with a plant on his head that helps him breathe. So come up with your own concept just like that. That is where you get to innovate and make this robot your own. And I know I said to go crazy with it, but if you go too crazy, there's a little problem you might face, which is rigging these bad boys. But don't worry, one solution to that is rigging the base mesh and posing it before you start modeling the robot. But that can get a bit tedious. It's always easier to make these robots when the base mesh is in a T-pose. So if not that, you can watch this amazing tutorial by William Landgren that will teach you how to approach this rigging process. I did something very similar to it, which is I made an armature just for the hand and the feet, because those were the only parts I needed to move for my final pose. One problem I faced while even doing that is I had a long piece of pipe be the arm, which just doesn't work. You can't rig a straight piece of metal to bend. So all I did was improvise a little. I found two other pieces that could also work as an arm and could also be rigged. So I just replaced the pipe with these two bits. So my point is, even if you went a little too crazy, there's always some way to undo these mistakes later on. So nothing to worry about. Next, I also parented the head to an empty, just in case I needed to pose that a little bit. I did try rigging the whole thing, to be honest, which involves making a mesh envelope around the robot and then rigging that envelope instead of the robot itself, and then using the surface deform modifier and binding it to that mesh envelope. And then if you hide the envelope, that armature should be able to pose the robot. But then the robot becomes all rubbery and stretchy, which does not look good in a still render for a robot that's entirely made of metal bits. If you're animating it, you might get away with it, but for a still render, I would suggest sticking with the first method. And I guess that's it. You're done. Put some set decorations around it, and you've got yourself a pretty sick looking robot. I call this one EcoBot, because he survives on plants. He's eco-friendly, even though he is plucking off a bunch of plants. Fuck. And not just one robot, with so many mechanical bits still unused, you can make another one with a totally different concept. I call this one Autobot. He drives himself with a steering wheel. That looks like fun. Or another one, a simpler one. This one I call the Decapitator. It brings your stuff to you, like your keys or your wallet or whatever you need, but if you get in its way, it will decapitate you. Maybe an even simpler one. This one I call the Stubbot. It just lies in unsuspecting places and stubs your feet with its screw nipple when you're least expecting it. It's the most vicious of them all. Beware of him.